The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen
Okay,
only.
hello, I'm Paul Skeldon, and welcome to this Internet Retailing podcast. Today we're talking about using apps to drive higher order value and boost customer lifetime value. Particularly apt, I think, following the sort of data we've been seeing coming out of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, where apps have stolen the show to some degree. But today we're joined by Paul Barnes, who's Northern Europe Territory Director for App Annie, and Andrea Mestrina, who's Head of Analytics and Data at Just Eat, who many of you are probably aware, it's sponsors of X Factor this year. And also, I believe, today entered the FTSE Top 100. Is that right, Andrea?
Yeah, that's right.
Excellent. So congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Paul. Good results.
We'll all be off down the pub after we've finished here. We're going to run through some quick slides to just set the scene about the app market for retail. And just some of the, sort of understand some of the numbers we're talking about. And then we're going to have a discussion between the three of us about the role of apps and how they do generate higher order value and boost customer lifetime value. Drill into sort of how that works for Just Eat, and particularly how you as retailers can learn from that. We will be taking questions from you, the audience, but we'll do that at the end. So if you can type your questions into the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel, we will come to them. So don't worry about that. We'll get to the end. We are being recorded, so a recording of this will be available probably 2 or 3 days after this, so early next week, which all of you that have signed up for it will automatically get a link to. And please feel free to pass that on to your family and friends. Ideal Christmas gift, I think you'll agree. Right, so that's probably enough from me. I'm one of the editors at Internet Retailing, so by no means an expert, but I will hand you over to the experts. And I'm going to give you Paul Barnes, who, as I said, is North Europe Territory Director at App Annie, who's going to set the scene for us with some slides. So, Paul, over to you.
Good, thank you. Bit confusing having two Pauls on the session.
Baffling,
today, so
baffling.
We'll make our way through it. So good afternoon, everyone. What I'm going to do is maybe take 10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes, just to run through kind of some top-down scene setting information really around what's happening in the app market. And it'll hopefully prompt some discussion, hopefully prompt some questions from the people listening today as well. And of course, given time of year, I will try and pick up a little bit of Black Friday, some preliminary data, early reports that are coming out from that. So I guess I should take a minute. Everyone, of course, will know Just Eat, given all the publicity. Whilst I find it hard to believe that the well-informed audience of Internet Retailing won't know who App Annie are, I should probably just take 30 seconds to explain that. Effectively, everything that App Annie does is to do with mobile apps. And really, we provide market data for mobile apps, the size of markets, information on apps, and literally millions of apps. And we provide data for what's happening every day in every country. And it is a problem that we solve. The app market is quite unique. If you're a retailer and you have a store, you can get your footfall data, you can do your primary research or market research or these things. If you want to know web traffic, you can go and find that out. But if you want to know what's happening in apps, it's really challenging because it's locked behind the walls of the app stores. So really, App Annie exists just to solve that problem. So that's what we do. Kind of how people use us, really there's a very simple sort of life cycle map there. So discovering opportunities at the top, finding out new apps that are coming into the stores. What are they doing? How successful are they being? New releases of apps. What's going on there? What's having an impact on the market? Helping you then build a strategy to respond to that, to take advantage of it, to continue to build your own app portfolio. And then the other three is really around the customer-specific life cycle. So user acquisition, whether that's organic through App Store searches and so on, or whether it's paid user acquisition, which is increasingly important. And of course, that's great, getting hold of people, getting a presence on people's smartphones is important. But deeper engagement is really what ultimately drives success. If you keep people coming back to your app, spending more time on it, then inevitably that, from a retail point of view, breeds success. And I'll talk some more about that in a minute. And then finally, of course, revenue being ultimately why we all do this. just a sense of scale. It's pretty amazing, really. We have 94 of the top 100 app publishers as our customers, which is a very privileged position to have. But it's pretty much everyone who has a serious stake in the app market tends to use us. And if you look at the retail side, see there's the big global players, Amazon, eBay, and so on. And if you look at areas like fashion retail, you see the people like ASOS, Zalando, Digital First, kind of well-known retailers. But it's much broader now. We have a number of the high street retailers in the UK, as well as a lot of the big names that you know from the US as well, and of course everyone in social media
and Just Eat.
Right in the middle there.
That's very.
Andrea would appreciate
that's happenstance.
Bang in the centre. And we actually have 1 million individuals, app users, app developers, people working in the app economy, logging into App Annie and using our data. So it's pretty ubiquitous, I think. Enough about us. Anyway, why is this important? This is one single. We're going to have lots of statistics, I'm sure, today, but one single one. Why this is important to retailers. If you look at all the money that's spent through apps, not through the App Store, but people transacting, buying goods and services through apps at the moment, it's about $1.1 trillion is the current estimate for last year. So we're kind of looking back to 2016. We haven't got the 17 figures completely accurate yet, but we think it's going to be around 2.3 trillion. The forecast out to 2021 is $6 trillion, which is just an insane number. To give it some context, it would make it, if that was a country, it would be the third biggest economy in the world. And that's everything that's spent through apps, and that's where we'll be by 2021. So if you're a retailer and you're not laser focused on success through the app channel, then obviously just at the scale of this growth, you're going to miss out to competition on this. Quick word on the landscape. I think there are many different players who have apps in the retail landscape. I suppose the two biggest chunks, what we call bricks and clicks, which hopefully doesn't offend anyone, but it's organisations who have a high street presence as well as an app presence, and typically online as well. Digital first. I mentioned some of the names there, ASOS, Zalando, the guys who are obviously started as e-commerce online businesses and in the main are principally app-driven now. The other subsection there, the universal shopping baskets, that's a really interesting space, which I think we'll start to see being disruptive in 2018. So this is businesses like Lyst who are really bringing a kind of meta search feel to retail. Almost the sort of Trivago, Skyscanner kind of approach to retail through an app. So that's one to watch. And then along the bottom, see these more focused areas like coupons, discount, discovery. It was interesting. Here comes my first Black Friday reference.
Oh, good. Excellent.
We looked at who was top of the keyword rankings for Black Friday over the weekend. So if you go in the App Store and you search Black Friday, who came up? The top 5 were all specific apps relating to Black Friday. The majority of those were actually discount discovery apps. So apps built for the purpose of trying to connect shoppers with deals on the day. And of course, payments and the C2C marketplaces continue to grow in pretty much all regions now. Shpock, eBay are ones that people will be familiar with, I'm sure, in the UK. So a bit of commentary about the size of the market from a download point of view. So this is new apps being put on people's phones or tablets for the first time. And overall, globally, it's growing 20%. Now, that may seem like a lot. I think for many retailers listening in today, a 20% year-on-year growth in customers would be great. I'm quite happy with that. But actually, this is starting to flatten out now. In many markets like the US and to a certain extent the UK, it's getting quite mature. So there are already a lot of apps installed on people's phones. On average, it's about 4 retail apps now for people in the UK. So we're starting to see a slowdown in that new download figure, particularly across some of these more mature markets. And just give it some context, I think the 2015 to 2016 increase in shopping in the UK was about 80%. So you get it, this idea it's starting to mature. But what's really important is actually how much time people are spending in these apps. So it's moving on the debate now from can I get a presence on people's phone, into how much time are they spending. And you see here this UK's kind of middle of the pack, 70% increase when you look at 2015 to 2017. And we're looking here at the number of sessions. It's, again, a big number, the number of billion sessions that happen in retail. So we're seeing this, and you see the uplift there, 2016 to 2017. So the focus is really about engagement more than downloads, which hopefully makes sense to people. Just looping back to that earlier point, the split between bricks and clicks and the digital first. This, I think, is really important in looking at the number of sessions that you have per user, look at it per week, per month, or per day. We're looking at it monthly here. And you can see when you look at the digital first apps in the UK, on average, they're running about getting up and over 20 sessions per user per month. And that's a pretty good benchmark, I think, for if you're in this retail space. If you look at some of the social shopping apps, they're actually up over 50 now, doing amazingly well. But when you look at the bricks and clicks equivalent, it's still bouncing around near 10 and pretty flat at the moment in the UK. So I think there's a real challenge there for bricks and clicks retailers to step it up and look as to how they can drive more engagement with people once they have apps on their phone. If you look at some of the best practice in other markets, and there's a discussion point here that maybe if I'm in store, people aren't going to use the app so often because they'll come in store. But actually, there's so many opportunities now to connect to shoppers whilst they're in store on the app.
So this isn't just about conversions through apps. This is about using apps to engage and drive them into stores, or to sell them something, or to take them onto the web.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a phrase that a few people use about the app being the glue that brings together, real world, offline and digital. And I think that's a great way to look at it, because the phone is omnipresent. It's always with your customer. You can access it. They can use it at any time. So actually using it in store for guides, for more content, for payment, even for fun, just having like QR. We've got a few retailers will have QR codes, which if you scan with your phone using the app whilst you're in store, gives you some kind of incentive or fun or whatever it might be. So I think there's a real missed opportunity or unexploited opportunity there, which shows in the stats for the bricks and clicks retailers and how they use apps. And this, looping back to why is engagement so important? It correlates really well with revenue. So this is Target. I don't know if you don't know Target, go and take a look at them for best practice in app. They're in a huge American retailer in the kind of home sector, really broadly categorized in there. But you see this strong correlation between the sales figures, digital sales in green, and the total minutes spent in blue. This is the total minutes spent in app. I think it's important to say it's total minutes rather than session length. Session length isn't necessarily a good thing to track, because if you have a really frustrating app and a lot of friction in the payments and those kinds of things, you push out session lengths to the disadvantage of the user. So looking at total is really important. Okay, just a little bit of a word on Black Friday. We touched on it already. I think this was really interesting, actually. It's maturing. It's going from that original view where it used to be Black Friday was this one-day spike in the stores, and then Cyber Monday was the online stuff. That seems to have gone. There's a great viral video going around on Black Friday. I don't know if you guys saw it, of the grand opening of the store. I forget which store it was. The grand opening of the doors, and there was one guy with a backpack stood outside. We kind of walked in. The message being everyone's actually shopping on apps on Black Friday. So Cyber Monday becomes kind of irrelevant because everyone's already doing their app shopping on Friday. And you can see here it's become across the whole of November. And it's spread out across the week. Actually, there was an interesting figure, but if you look at the week running up to Black Friday, there was 6 million hours spent in the UK on shopping apps. Wow. 6 million hours on shopping apps in that week running up. So it's an amazing, and that's a big increase. It's sort of 45% up from 2015, I think. So that's good, but you see how it's smoothed over the month now. So this is really maturing. A few points that were interesting to note from Black Friday. I was talking to Barclaycard actually yesterday about this, and the transaction volumes went up on Barclaycard 30%, I think it was, but actually the overall spend that they saw decreased slightly, and that's because there's a shift now. It used to be about big electrical items, so you buy your flat screen TV or OLED TV or whatever on Black Friday. Actually, the biggest winners that we saw over the weekend in terms of ramp up of activity were the fashion retailers. JD Sports came out top, so I think they clearly did something really well. But also people like ASOS, Urban Outfitters, Zara, all of them had a big spike over the Black Friday weekend. So I think it's just becoming more mainstream now, and more broader in its reach than it was. Okay, so I think that's probably enough from me. I'm going to.
Well, we'll hear some. We will hear some more from you. I think because there's plenty of questions here that we need. There's plenty of things to sort of bring out of that. I think that we can discuss. But I think the sort of thing that interests me, I think particularly to kick this off, is the role of mobile web versus mobile apps. As far as I can see from all the research and stuff I've looked at over the years. Apps sort of took off, then stuttered a bit and weren't really where people went. They were more sort of interested in finding things through search on mobiles and being directed to mobile websites, where invariably they had a really appalling experience and didn't convert. But we're seeing, I think, now move back towards apps. Is that something that you would agree with, Andrea?
Well, yeah. Mobile web is still, for Just Eat, or web in general, the main source of new customer. Okay, even if web is losing in terms of both. The amount of revenue produced compared to apps in the recent year, for sure. But also apps. It's a wonderful area to be able to retain better your customer and also automatically make them more valuable to your business. But also, it's very hard to produce. As effective as web, but probably mainly because we had so many years of marketing on web. Okay, think about when Google started to be able to do that, to do proper app marketing that it's as effective in terms of return of investment, cost per order, cost per acquisition, than simply buy non-organic download. Okay, overall.
Yeah, but you're finding these app users are much more valuable to you.
Okay, so yeah, for sure. What we find is that. Customer that either start their relationship with Just Eat, or we are able to switch from a web relationship to an app relationship. Stay longer as an active customer Just Eat, have automatically produced a higher lifetime value for us, mainly because their frequency is higher. Okay, so we have better way to them remind them that we exist, that we deliver food without any problem to their home, right? And then that it's hassle-free in some way, right? And compared to the web, okay, and also it costs less. Once you are in the app, you have a hook with them, right? You have tools that every person in charge of retention or reacquisition can use to remind the customer, hey, look, order your food tonight from your favorite cuisine or something like that. Okay, so yeah, web still, as I say, we still know that also you need to switch them if you acquire them for web a specific time in their lifetime with you. Otherwise, then over the months, a customer becomes in some way, unless it's someone that order every week, once or multiple times a week, okay, over the time it becomes less interested, okay? So you need to switch them at the right point. After one point, it's more.
How do you know when that right point is? What is that right point? How do you switch?
For us, we use the lifetime value calculation. So for every customer that joins us to submit a successful first order, we start tracking several factors about themselves, and we start assigning them based on their behavior on our platforms to different groups where we know how they behave over the time. And at one point, we know that since we know the behavior of the group you've been assigned, we know at one point what if you are a web customer. Over that, it's even a waste, not of time, but it's a way. It becomes a negative effect to try to push you to download your app every time I send you an email, every time you land on a website, every time you have sometimes we try through the call center. Okay, it's not a call center agent. Because still, there's a known small person of people that still loves to pick up the phone to order food. Okay, that still exists. Okay,
It's unbelievable.
it's unbelievable. It's still there, right?
I had heard rumours that there were people like that out there.
Can I just ask? I think that's that's something I've seen elsewhere. Is this kind of best practice idea and this principle that if you have a customer who's more loyal, then they're more suited to an app. And it's that kind of that concept that if you're going to have a relationship that is more personal and more close with between the brand and the customer, then that's suited in the app, and clearly that drives benefits. I mean, I'm conscious you can't talk too many numbers, but just how big is that difference in terms of the lifetime value once you have of an app customer versus a web?
Up to 50% higher. Okay, an app customer fully acquired from an app compared to a customer you first acquired from web can be up to 50% more valuable to Just Eat the company. Okay. And if you switch them, it's not clearly 50% because also when you think about lifetime value, you also think about its revenue produced. Okay, minus the cost of acquiring them. Okay, so when you switch them, clearly 50%, but it's still on the range of 30% higher. Okay. And mainly that it's let's say it's purely the longer relationships or higher retention, higher frequency of ordering for us. Okay, whatever time frame you want to consider, 30 days, a week, or 12 months. Okay, but also what is something interesting. It's what becomes more stable. It's their average order value. So I mean, a web customer at the beginning, it's more valuable. Like they seems to love to add more stuff to their basket. Okay, but over time this decreases and they match, and there's a point where apps then becomes like nearly a flat line, and web keep decreasing. Okay,
got it. So I see. And in terms of that conversion from web into app, do you incentivize people to do it?
At the moment, we don't do it.
Okay.
In previous experience when I was in the travel industry, there was quite a common practice. At Just Eat, at the moment, we try to simply do non-incentivize, but we try different approaches. Okay, on the starting from all the emails contains at the top of a button to download the app, because we know when we send an email to you if you already have an app user or not. Okay. On the order confirmation page of a web, there's a big block that reminds the benefit of having apps compared to not having apps. We try, the things that during the journey to see, small banner or big banner, like we even try the full takeover of your homepage, but Google doesn't like it, so you can test it, but unfortunately Google is still strong enough to dictate sometimes what you can do on your website, right? So
what do you think it is that makes the app users more valuable? What are they doing that's different?
I think there's our logo, our brand, it's in their phone, and simply automatically it's an automatic reminder of we exist. Okay, they can use it. Okay, the other thing is an app is a platform compared to web. Okay, web there's multiple browser, multiple different OS and so on, so you need to always develop some stuff. In the world of app, you develop for iOS and for Android. Yes, there's different phones and different manufacturer of a model, but the system is basically the same. Okay, you have a platform to notify them, to engage them a lot simpler if you have the right tools than web. Okay, another time I probably mentioned too much, but for example, Google try a lot to try to build the same notification for people on web, on phone, and so on, but they are not as effective as a normal notification or an in-app notification. Okay.
I was going to come to notifications because that's one of the things you can do with apps that you can't do in other ways. Sort of, push your message to their hungry. What else can you do with apps to engage consumers that you can't do with other tools?
Since, for example, for Just Eat, since you need to have an account with us, okay. Sometimes you can't enter into the only retail world, but you need to be logged in. When you log in, you always log in on apps. Okay, the percentage of people that are always signing on apps is 99%. So as soon as you click and open up, we know who you are, we know you're there, okay? So you can personalize better experience from day one, okay? For example, what we see more on app is that on our Android app, we have a module that reminds you of your last order, okay? With the clear action button on the home page to reorder that. That's a huge amount of traffic and a huge amount of orders and conversion, okay? When we speak about food, probably people are very, that's what they like, that's what they taste, and
that's true, I suppose. Yeah, so they hit the
yes.
order again.
If I was our head of data science, he ordered 350 times with Just Eat since he joined already.
Really, the same thing,
and 60% of them is from the same restaurant.
Unbelievable. What about things like payments and things? Because being logged in, does that make the payment process?
Yeah, we clearly. You have Apple Pay, you have Android Pay, you have. Now we have Google have enabled their smart lock, so you don't even have to longer have an account. If you are an Android phone and you're logged into Google, you automatically logged into Just Eat. It's incredible. Okay, no longer form to fill. Okay, so yeah. All these new mobile apps-oriented payment makes payment even easier, right?
Yeah.
You made it click your thumb or now with the iPhone 10, Face ID, and I paid, job done, right?
Absolutely.
I don't have to eat with credit card. I don't have to pay. Even PayPal, it's one that in some market works very well. Like Canada people love it. Australia people strangely want us immediately to have it. Okay?
Well, I always used PayPal because it was easier than the other ways, but now with Apple Pay, other payment mechanisms are available. I find PayPal now a bit clunky. So, Paul, what sort of other things do you think sort of sell apps to people? We've had about push notifications and payments. Do you think that's one of the reasons that sort of we've seen more use of apps is that they're making it easier?
Yeah, I think ease is a really important thing to highlight, and it's ease of use and lack of friction. I think once you have an app, it's just so easy compared to web to go in and do that repeat order, as Andrea was talking about, or to go in and do a quick search or something like that. And you see the best practice retailers really starting to do that now. So ease is important. What's an example? Like search is a great example. I don't know if you've seen that ASOS have launched the photo search, so you can, and I'm sure other retailers as well are adopting this, so you can take a photo of a picture of someone you see and use that to actually search on the product. And, I think that's a simple example of how you make it easy. Payments we've talked about as well already. The other part, I think, is around ease is personalization. You can just, through an app, because of the depth of information you have, just make it more tailored to me. And you see, again, retailers like Wish and Lists doing that very effectively. But apart from that, I think if you're looking at it, there's also the aspect of making it, I suppose it's kind of rewarding loyalty. And it's maybe the way to look at it. You see a lot of really successful retailers now bringing loyalty schemes into apps and using that to say, recognizing that it's kind of a privilege to have your app on someone's phone, and it's good to say thank you for that. So, and the app is a great environment to give people loyalty rewards, whether they're coupons or vouchers or helping them redeem them at point of sale or something like that. There's quite a lot there.
Excellent. So, Andrea, what can you do to sort of drive people to get your app on their phone and keep using it? I mean, as many people know, Just Eat does sponsor X Factor. Does that sort of help in getting people to download the app? And if so, how does it help in then getting them to use it? And other marketing ways of doing it. How do you get people to actually get your app?
Even if it's a little bit harder than the web, but still, for us, still a word of paid and organic, right? Organic is where, the ASO, okay, play games, and I Just Eat now finally focus. Every market has a specialist that is in charge of that, okay? And through the tools that Appenny provides, we're trying to find the right way to really create a strategy around that. We know that for basic keywords, we are strong, but for more complex keywords, our competitor, that in some way is strange because especially in the UK, the majority of our competitors are purely app-based compared to us when we were born, when apps was not even here, right? Think about it. Just Eat has been around since early 2000, right? So apps first time
an old company.
Yes,
yeah.
so company.
Old,
Come
old.
on, invest.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm joking. So so ASO is one, and the other one in paid we do a lot with social. Okay, really. Okay, Facebook mainly works very well. Okay, both as a brand awareness area, but also as a driver. Clearly, it's a paid, so you need to be sure you made your maths correctly. Okay, we are in the business of takeaway food. Okay, we don't sell white goods, right, or big stuff. So the revenue we get for every single order is not as much as a dishwasher or a cooker or something like that, right? Or a fridge. But apart from that, and the other thing is that you can do. I can say that Just Eat. We try. For example, Amazon works very well for us. There's a connection, even if they are a competitor with Amazon Restaurant. Think about it. Okay.
Really? So you get Amazon?
Yes.
You get,
On the within the Amazon app or the Amazon network. Okay. Paid advertise for app download works really as is efficiency.
That's interesting.
Okay. And one that the other one we saw our competitor do a lot more, and we have to do it's the proper in-app advertising pay. Okay. Uber Eats probably from the start we get from App Annie, it's one of the best there. So that's our next challenge. Can we make it work for us too? That it's everything is we need to be sure that it's efficient, right? Well, right. You can say always try. That's the learnings of the basic of the Just Eat way of thinking. Okay, but if you throw money and they simply you can buy a download, but doesn't really becomes a customer on the same way we know from our stuff. But I mean, is it worth spending the money? Can you reallocate the budget somewhere else, right?
What, Paul? What other sort of tips are there for getting people to sort of use a company's apps, not just Eat, but apps in general?
Well, I think there's a few ways really. I mean, just to add a bit to what Andrea said on the App Store optimization side. I think it's a big area, and I think it's something that a lot of companies don't really get to grips with. The ones who do it well are constantly looking at how their screenshots, their app descriptions, their meta tags within the app in the store are being effective at getting new users onto having the app. And again, if you look over peak periods in retail, look through Christmas, we looked at it, in fact, Black Friday again. So one of the top retailers in the UK who was successful flipped their screenshots to be black background rather than white background on the run into Black Friday. Now, it can seem like small things, but actually they can really make a difference. And if you track what you're doing with which keywords are working, what your conversion rates are like on that, it's really, there's a lot of benefit to be gained from that. Absolutely agree with Andrea on the paid user acquisition. It's a big area. It's easy to waste money on as well. So you do have to make sure you're making some informed decisions. You can throw as much money as you like at paid user acquisition without necessarily getting results. So it's done correctly, it's incredibly powerful. The other bit I'd add, though, is a separate one, is looking at things like partnerships. As one of my favorite bits of data to look at for an app is what we call cross-app usage. So looking for users of that app, what other apps do they use? Maybe in associated sectors. So if you're looking at a retailer, what entertainment apps do they use? What food and drink and restaurant apps do they use? And if you see you've got some strong correlations there, there's some really neat partnerships that you can do that work well for both app publishers, relatively low cost, and can be quite neat at actually getting another app's user base to convert to yours. Seen it with one of the retailers of Nordstrom, I think, with Starbucks in the US, and there was one of the retailers in London did it around London Fashion Week with again, I think it was a coffee retailer, to get that users of one app to download the other. So there's some innovative ways you can do, as well as just innovative approaches, as well as just spending money.
Excellent. And what about sort of actually getting people to use apps? I mean, this is sort of getting them to download, and obviously the sort of tying up with other sort of apps that these people tend to use as well. What other things are there to actually drive usage? Because we all have hundreds of apps on our phone. I'm sure you do too. I don't use most of them. How can you sort of help businesses like Just Eat drive actual usage of the app?
Yeah, I think it's about learning, really. And there's so many things going on in the app space at the moment, and it's about looking at the impact of those different things. So whether it's social, whether it's personalization, whether it's rich content, all of these things are being tried out. Gamification, and it's, you need to understand and track what your competitors are doing, what other providers of apps that your customers use are doing, and see what works effectively. So a good one I really like for retail is short form video. If you look at how we're all watching video content now, it's moving more and more towards shorter. You see these huge growths in YouTube video consumption growing much faster than Netflix. You see the impact of video going into Snapchat and things like that. So as a retailer, if you're able to put relevant video content, whether it's, if you're a fashion retailer, it might be catwalk videos. If you're a product provider, it might be showing your product in, or how people use it in new forms of video. Those kinds of things can be very effective at bringing people back and getting them using the app more. The other thing I just go back to is that bricks and clicks, guys. People who have those high street presence, how can you use those to drive more engagement? It's really smart technology around beacons in store, combining beacons with the push notifications that we talked about earlier, using video within the push notifications, and you can bring these things together to say, hey, you're a loyal customer of ours. We see you just walked past the store. We've got some jeans or whatever it is that you might be interested in on an offer, and here's a short video of what they look like. And bringing those together in a smart way and tracking the data all the time to understand what's working can be really effective at driving more engagement.
Excellent. Andrea, is any role for video in the sort of specific world of Just Eat? Does food lend itself to visualization?
Well, on social, yes. On social, we play a lot with videos, even just for brand awareness. Like video that doesn't contain a proper click to Just Eat, okay? But just, a paid ad on Facebook where people see it, okay? Within the app, now what he played, I think that, and that's where, it's good to have competitor. More video, it's a good image. So clearly, Uber Eats and Deliveroo have shown us the way to Just Eat on how to really create an app that delivers food, but it seems like it sells luxury stuff. Let's be honest, okay? You see some burger that seems like
yeah, right? Put it in a proper box and charge twice as much. So, yes. Okay, what about sort of the role of all this sort of data that you have in sort of working out how to sort of design and tweak the design of your app? Do you do much with understanding how people are using it, changing how your app is designed?
It's a basic of a day-to-day, okay? So within my area, there's both people that look at the app data from a pure marketing perspective and the app data from a pure product analytic perspective, okay? So how they behave, through the funnel, where do they exit, where do they have struggle, okay? And then Just Eat use a lot, interview with our customers, so through our UX, UI, and research department, okay, to really understand how customer search for food, thinks about food, what's the struggle. And last year we created a huge framework called Jobs to be Done, interviewing thousands of customers across the globe, really to get different, because we know that every country has different habits and people are different country by country, to understand what we really would like to have from the best takeaway app, okay? And now, we're working, we know them, we score them, we understand what's, if it was a pain or nice to have and so on, we're working towards to fix the top important one, okay? So, and also, the last thing is nothing goes out. Just Eat for an app perspective, we always have a beta period internally with our personal people. Then we release it to a small percentage of people. You can do it thanks to the automatic update that every platform and the OS now has. And then, everything is a test, okay? Either, just to double check a previous understanding or a bug or the result of a bug, but everything gets tested. Okay.
Okay. And Paul, what are your thoughts on sort of using this data and usage data to design?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great. Andrea was talking about kind of the marketing side, particularly. I think it's absolutely a great way to do it. The people sometimes I think have the biggest challenges are the product managers responsible for retail apps, because they must have a list of so many features that they should have, from the CEO to customer feedback to colleagues all saying, hey, you've got to have social. Oh, no, you've got to have personalization. Oh, no, what about that video content? And there's so many things to do. And there's too much at stake just to rely on anecdote or gut instinct or whatever you think. It can be a challenge, but I think you have to rise to that challenge of using data and putting a kind of return on investment type approach to it, to be able to quantify all of those things you possibly could do and say, well, what impact do we think we'll get from a new payment model, say, changing the payment metric, or a new login model using Touch ID or something more sophisticated than that. And the only way you can do it really, or certainly the best way, is to look at other apps that have used that and see what the impact is. So if you're looking at payment, say you're looking to upgrade your payment model and use a different approach to payment, look at an app that's implemented it, look at session lengths before and after. Do you see the session lengths go down on a like-for-like basis? And if you do, great, that's a sign of friction being removed and making it easier. If you're looking at something like a new social element to it, are you seeing frequency of sessions go up following people release that particular function? If you look at a loyalty scheme and you look at your competitors and how they've released loyalty schemes, one approach versus another, how did they result in total time spent, say, in app? So I think it's there to be done, and it is challenging, certainly for product people as well as marketing people. But you have to step up to it. Otherwise, you're just really too exposed. And in the challenge with the app market, it moves quick. And if you start losing and getting behind, it's difficult to catch up.
For example, I mean, the competitive part of App Annie, where you can see how your competitor behavior over time, and they compare that with the timeline that App Annie track all the different changes, app release, and so on, give you so much information if you are fully focused on understanding how your competitor is doing. Okay, or it's that sometimes it's invaluable things that you can buy or find. Okay, so.
And I think in retail there is a data driven mentality. You look at, I've worked over the years with plenty of sort of more traditional high street retailers, and you have these trading daily trading metrics and reports and summaries that drive decision making about merchandising stock, whatever it might be. And I think if you just apply that same mentality to the app space, then you won't go far wrong.
Great. As time is marching on, I'd like to sort of bring it back to where we started, really, about sort of lifetime value and of customers. Just to sort of wrap up before we go to the questions from the audience. Andrea, what are the most important metrics, do you think, to understand lifetime value and how it changes?
Well, I think it changes business by business. For Just Eat, it's your journey so far with us. Okay, so where you come from, you become a Just Eat customer. Okay, what's your tenure with us? How long have you been a customer? Okay, and how you use day to day, ideally day to day, let's say, how you use our apps. Okay, and our web platform. Okay, I mean, what type of things you buy, how frequently you buy them. Okay, when, time of the day, okay, day of the week, all the type of stuff.
Okay, interesting. And Paul, what do you see from App Annie's point of view as the sort of metrics to understand customer value?
Yeah, well, I think there's some basic ones. Open rate is always one I look at with retail. How many of the people who have your app, how many of them are opening it at least once a month? I mean, in some cases you need to look weekly, but what's that open rate? Because that gives you a sense about who's engaged. And then actually sessions per month and total time, I think, are really useful because you're competing for time. I mean, that's the reality of it. If you look at people in the UK, on average, they have between 2 and 4 retail apps on their phone, and they will spend, again, on average, an hour, maybe a little bit more, but around that level, an hour a month, actually in those apps. So you're competing for that time. So what is it about your app and how you're driving your loyalty scheme and so forth, and how successful are you being at that? Because I think in most cases it is somewhat of a zero-sum game. You're competing for a limited amount of retail app time that people will spend.
Okay, interesting. Well, that's really good. So for people listening who hear hooting, it's outside. We're in the middle of central London currently. We're not doing it in an Uber. We've got some questions that have come in. They're sort of fairly sort of general and dispersed, but I'll just trundle through them. We'll start with this one from someone who laughingly says, "Hello from Dubai, where it's nice and warm." So for those of you that are like us sitting in freezing cold London, boo. And he asked, what do you see as the best practice that combines apps, beacons, and omnichannel? You touched on this earlier on.
Yeah, I did. And I think probably the best one I've seen is at serious scale, is Target in the US, who use that combination of apps and beacons and push notifications as well. But if you go to a Target store, you can find your way around the store. You can use the app for product location. You can use it for getting more content. When you go to check out, you can use the loyalty points you've got from your Cartwheel app, which is their loyalty scheme, to pay for goods on the way out. They even do some fun things with scanning codes and things like that. And I wouldn't be surprised to start to see them layering on augmented reality onto that as well. So, to follow the yellow line that the app's going to paint on the floor through the camera to find out where you're going, and then see an overlay of content relevant to that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the sort of stuff I get really excited about, which is embarrassing for me. Target do some things like that. No one else really does, though. How far off do you think we are from sort of actually seeing this in reality?
Well, yeah, you'd be surprised. So there's one of the leading two of the leading high street retailers that we work with, who have beacons in all their stores now. And it's you're going to see a lot more of it in the UK in the high street next year, and some of it's being used already. In fact, if you walk down. We're near Oxford Street. You could walk down Oxford Street, and there's half a dozen stores you'd hit quite quickly which have beacons in already. So it's very much on the cusp.
I shall do that straight after we finished here. I shall go beacon hunting.
A completely new wardrobe.
Absolutely. Or there's some sort of radio-related brain injury. Andrea, do you have anything to add there about sort of combining apps and beacons? I mean, you're an online-only business, so it's not really
purely online. Okay, it's we are looking at the other stuff. We're looking at all the different other apps platforms as well. Okay, the famous OTT, right? Alexa, Google Home, the future Label Home, and so on. Okay, as well as a more efficient way to deliver food to our customer. Okay, it's still in trial. It's very complicated, but we already deliver more than 1,000 orders through our robots. Okay,
through your robots.
See, I find that even more exciting than augmented reality. I can actually not only can I get a pizza, but it comes by a robot. I'm living the dream.
You need your phone to open it, because you have a code there, right?
Even better. It's got everything. I can open it using only my face. This is the world I want to live in. Right, so this is changing tack again. When building an app, how do you choose your payment platform?
Well, that's complicated. We should know at least what type of app. But look, you need to think about, in my opinion, the target audience that you will focus on. Okay, if you're speaking about a very young generation, probably go to the native mobile payment for iOS and Android. They are easy to implement, and in some way they're also cheap in terms of commission. Okay, if you are broad, you need to consider everything as we discussed before. You need to consider PayPal and the old form where you put your credit card, right?
Yeah. I mean, the obvious answer I think is just put as many as possible in there. But
Yeah, I think it'd be good to look at kind of picking up on that point, understand your audience.
Yeah.
You know, and you can do that with app data. You can look at what are the most used apps in that category in that country where you're launching your new app, and see what payment methods are people using there. Because ultimately, the way you reduce friction is if your customer gets to your app and you have a payment method that they're familiar with and they like using, then it's just going to be easier for them. So a bit of research, I would say, around apps that your target audience are using.
Okay, we should have taken bets on this beforehand, but we do have a GDPR question. How might GDPR impact the value of apps, and what should we be thinking about?
I'm not sure I'm entirely qualified to talk too much about that. I don't have a particular GDPR.
It's a deep one, I think, isn't it? Because for anyone not familiar, it's the General Data Protection Regulations, isn't it, that comes into force in May next year, which is all about what data you can and can't store. You've got to justify the value of storing the data.
Yeah, I think the only comment I would make, actually, is there's a bit of a hygiene factor around how you use data in your apps anyway. And I always think the good philosophy is to see it as a privilege. You should actually, people's phones are so personal these days, the device that runs their life, and you should have just an inherent respect and feel privileged if they choose to take your app and put it on their phone. And if you use that as a mentality to govern how you store their data and how you use it in terms of communicating with them, then it's a good principle. I know the regulations have a million pages of exactly what you
quite,
do,
but yes,
philosophically,
as a rule of thumb, yeah. So, what about sort of storing, data issues with that? I mean, how do you sort of?
Well, for us, GDPR, it's a full project going on. Okay, we even hired especially an external firm to understand all the.
I think everybody's had to, haven't they?
Okay. And I think that there's two parts: the data that you want to collect and store, and also be sure that all your, provider, any services of the store data for you, provide data for you, needs to be GDPR compliant too. Okay, we're speaking to our, testing platform. We're speaking to all our, tracking tools and partner and so on. Okay, they all need to respect that.
Okay, lovely. Question, I was going to bring this up earlier on, but we got sidetracked in some of the more interesting things. But progressive web apps, read a lot about those actually this week, trying to sort of get to grips with sort of how significant they may or may not be. Do you see them bridging a gap between mobile web and native apps? And do you think smaller independent retailers could benefit from their own branded apps with PWAs and building engagement with features such as loyalty, ordering, reservations, push notifications, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, I think my take is it's getting more blurry. Certainly, the divide that there was between mobile web and app is becoming less distinct. Partly through progressive web pages closing it in one direction, and also through instant apps or streaming apps, as they used to be called for a while, in the other direction, where you can get app functionality without actually having to download the whole app. So I think both of those are worth looking at. But I'd go back to the overall principle that the web is a great way of customer acquisition. But once you have the kind of loyal relationship and the frequent relationship with a customer, the only way you'll really optimize and maximize that, both from a service and experience and from a revenue perspective, is through app.
Okay. Andrea, any thoughts on the sort of progressive web apps?
So the point that for progressive apps is still, there's a big question mark. It depends on another time on the audience, but it's still not available on any iOS device, right? So you still cancel, okay? And for us, for example, Just Eat, iOS users are still higher than Android user, okay? And in some way, the old point that iOS users are also a little bit more, posh. Let's put it that way.
I like to think so.
Yes. Bigger spenders.
So it's an interesting technology, okay? it seems, more oriented to people that provide the services that require probably offline capability more than, okay? I know that, I come from the travel background. A small travel startup made PWA really works for them. When, you're able to automatically have your information about everything, your ticket, your plane, and so on, offline always, so without having. But in reality, it's a little bit more expensive, but you can do exactly the same through a normal app, right? You still to download them. That's while progressive apps, you can trick them a customer for a normal website, right? So it's, I think it's something that people should consider and put on their shopping list, and then based on company strategy and so on.
Yeah, well, to see what the ROI may or may not be. Yes. Anything you want to add about PWAs, Paul?
No.
So we shall swiftly move on to, do you think Google's instant apps for Android will disincentivize app downloads?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the same question.
Pretty much
really.
the same thing.
It's operating that space. The idea is it should reduce friction. If you're looking at one-time payments, one-time transactions, then instant apps are easier certainly easier for people anyway, but would probably reduce overall app downloads. But I think it comes back to that. If you're a frequent purchaser, then I wouldn't expect it to have a big long-term impact. It could be another way of customer acquisition, actually.
Okay. Do you think there's sort of moving towards the centre? You've got sort of websites becoming more like apps, and apps becoming more, in some ways, like websites, in that they can be sort of live updated, even though they're native and things like that. Is there sort of a shift like that, or are they still very separate entities doing separate jobs?
Well, there's still that platform point that Andrea talked about, which is always going to have a big impact on people developing content and transactional software of one form or another. So there's a big inherent difference there. I think that's always going to remain.
More in terms of sort of like from a functionality perspective, as a user, as a customer, is there am I going to sort of not really start to see the difference?
No, I think there'll always be a difference.
Because as you said, they're used for different things. Yeah. Are they going to be built out in different ways, or are they?
But I think if you're looking at a news website and you're trying to get your daily updates of news feeds, you'll probably get to a point where you don't see any difference there. Within the context that we're talking about today, within retail and transaction, I think you'll still see a
big difference. Excellent. Well, we're coming up to an hour of discussion. I think we'll wrap it up there. Just before we go, to leave our lovely audience with something sort of hot to take away, what would be your sort of biggest tip, your hottest tip for retailers about apps? What would be your one key piece of advice that they must follow in 2018?
If I can say, look after your reviews. It contains so much information about your customer that sometimes we forget that there's that functionality available. Okay, so
excellent. And Paul,
what would I say? I would say loyalty. I would say just ask that question for your most loyal customers on your app. Are you giving them the right experience? Are you giving them the right rewards and recognizing them and thanking them for using your app?
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, Andrea from Just Eat and Paul from App Annie, it's been really interesting. Hopefully you, the audience, have also enjoyed it. I know I have. The recording, as I say, will be available in a couple of days on the Internet Retailing website. Will be sent to you as you register to listen in. And do feel free to share it with all your friends and family. But I will leave it there. And thank you very much for taking part. And thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.